Hey, what's up, guys? It's Halloween night, where it's a summer night. What the hell, man? Yeah, and the H.P. Lovecraft. I mean, there's a million collections. I mean, there's so many. But these are ones I don't like. When you see videos of people with the Lovecraft collections, right? Obviously, as a public domain thing, for the most part, you can make all kinds of collections of his work. But these three, I have a couple others that are people have covered and that are more available. These three you don't see a lot. So, and I'm remembering when I got these. So let's look at the years that these collections were coming out. And this was I think this was like the first one that I bought. I had read one from a friend of mine, and you know, but this one was different. This came out I think in 2000. When is it? 2003. Okay, my fiance was still alive, and it was kind of cool. It had a good combination of. I always argue that Lovecraft. I like his early work, which people don't seem to like as much as like the Call of Cthulhu and forward. Basically, when he had moved from New York back to Providence, and of course those stories are probably the greatest stuff he did. But I like a lot of his old Weird Tales stuff, where it was just like more. It wasn't cosmic horror. It was just creepy stuff, man. And this is a good collection. And I like that the intro, Poppy Z Bright. I remember she's a woman or writer. She's a big deal back in like the early '90s, and I liked her. Her intro was nice because it was short and to the point. She didn't mention anything about Lovecraft was a racist, all that shit. So it did none of that. Good for her. Oh, she's from New Orleans, so yeah, it was a good intro, and the collection is pretty good. I'll just, and they have like little things here, Neil Gaiman, John Carpenter, Stephen King. Okay, Clive Barker, of course, right? Clive Barker. Is he? Yeah, he. I would argue he's Lovecraftian, but he takes it to a much different level. Lovecraft would not approve, which is fine. But like in terms of the story, I will just my own take on it, right? I always like the Hound, right? That's sort of like his decadent period. I always like the Hound, the doom in it, right? Um, Beyond the Wall of Sleep, I always like that one too because it's sort of it's done as a journal, right? And it's interesting. It's not really. I mean, in terms of horror, it's more like an alien sort of like this poor bastard guy is like a channel for an alien thing, of course, the Shadow over Innsmouth is like literally every damn city, almost every other city you look at in the Western world is the Innsmouth, right? Herbert West Reanimator to me, and I remember reading it. I know he didn't like it. It was very pulpy. I always thought Herbert West Reanimator was really good. He hated it. I thought it was really brilliant. Because like each chapter leads into the other, but each chapter can be read on its own. And there you go. And then, of course, Charles, I guess his novella, Charles Dexter Ward. So now we go to this one, a much slimmer one, both by Del Rey. You remember Del Rey? Del Rey was cool. They did the Robotech novels, I remember. This one was a shorter collection, but I mean, geez, it has like his last major, his epic, which is At the Mountains of Madness, right? Which everyone forgets. At the Mountains of Madness, you could argue it's inspired by, but some people say it's an outright sequel to, the narrative of Arthur Gordon Pym of Nantucket, right, by Poe, and you could argue that that was like the prequel to that. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I wish someone would do something more with that, where Pym it has to deal with the Shoggoths of like a century before, or actually less than a century before these dudes. Now, the Dreams of the Witch House, the Statement of Randolph Cartwright, the Shunned House. Now, this is the one that if I remember correctly, the Shunned House was the one that it was a story he wrote, novella, that was supposed to be published in his lifetime. He wrote letters about that. This story, which was a novella length, was going to be published, right? So you always know about the history of Lovecraft, his Weird Tales stories. The first collection made for Herb, he was already passed on. But while he was alive, this was the one that they were supposed to actually publish in his lifetime. They never did. And I friggin' the Shun House, it doesn't, it really doesn't get mentioned a lot. And I don't know why. It's a brilliant story. The way it mixes historicism with the science of the time, and the whole idea. I don't want to give away the ending, but the whole idea that like the creature they discover, they did, and you could say it's a callback to his Houdini story, right? Beneath the pyramids, or in the thing of the pyramids, or something like that. I forgot the name of it, but the whole idea that you realize that this horrible creature that you're seeing is just a part of the creature, and a small part of the creature, like an iceberg, right? You know those iceberg videos that everybody likes to do. That's the Shun House. I always thought that was great. Very underrated story, doesn't get mentioned enough. So, and another collection here. This is actually James, my brother James gave this to me. I don't know where he got it. This is from '89. Not by Del Rey, by some other publisher. And in terms of these stories, right? Yeah, they got the usual, like Call of Cthulhu, Dagon, Rats in the Walls, Color Out of Space, Shadow Out of Time. Shadow Out of Time, man. I mean, that's not even a horror story, really. That is a mind trip freaking story. But there's stories in here that you don't really, that are also kind of rare, right? Winged Death. I believe this was one of his pseudonym stories. Winged Death. This is really effective. Told as a journal, with the idea of a fly, right? A biting fly that gives you diseases, and the idea of reincarnation and vengeance. And also, apparently it takes place in South Africa. So the Arkham Reporter had mentioned that to me. That's right, it did take place in South Africa. It almost doesn't seem like a Lovecraft story, but Lovecraft, you know, his style, which I don't understand when people say, "Oh, his style, I can't read his work." I can't read his work. Then you're a stupid idiot. I don't. You're a moron. How could you not read his work? I don't. His prose is too. Are you stupid? Honestly, are you dumb? Okay, I'd sound like a moron with my accent, but I can understand everything he wrote, and it's great, right? Anyway, let me shut up. Of course, the Nameless City is another underrated one, but the Mound, right? The Mound. This is, like I said, you know, I always bring up this story here, right? The Winged Death and the Mound. There's some other stories here. What is it? Hey, but like the Mound is like, I always argue it's like a Clark Ashton Smith inspired story. Literally, the Clark Ashton Smith, the Frog God, which I can't pronounce, figures in this, but Cthulhu figures in this story as well. It's almost like an anti-John Carter story, okay? Where like the letters of apparently originally the story was to be ghostwritten for I forgot the woman's name. She just had the idea of a headless squaw ghost walking around, and gave that to Lovecraft to make a story. And Lovecraft turned this into literally a Clark Ashton Smith type Edgar Rice Burroughs, but like in a negative, dark way where there's no heroism. Into one of the most amazing stories he did that doesn't, like with Winged Death, doesn't really get mentioned a lot. So anyway, these are the underrated collections of H.P. Lovecraft. So someone might say, "Oh, they're not. There's more underrated ones than that," and there are. There's ones I haven't seen. Arkham Reporter mentioned one in particular, I think, that had like the horror in the museum and stuff like that. Has a lot of his ghost writer stories in them, but like, you know, I'm going with you by this. You want to see the books, videos, well, here you go. So, and these, like, I always take these close to my heart, man. I'm not even gonna bring up the fact that read a Lovecraft story now, particularly his period, like after when he moves back to Providence. Read them now, right? Read them now. You think it's a fucking joke? Look out your bloody window. It's not such a fucking joke now, is it? All right. It's like getting all serious.